Okay, here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Wonderful. We are live. Thank you, everybody, for joining. This is Sheba's Spice Rack. It's a sex talk show about sex and dating and so much more. This week, this is our episode 5. Woo! We're going live at 5. Episode 5, and my special guest is another amazing practitioner in St. Petersburg, Florida. They are amazing erotic photographer, and they're going to share with you some of the offerings that they have. And yeah, welcome everyone. Liz Nygaard, yay! I have to get an audience audio track to come in so that it's
yes,
like the Muppet Show. How are you doing, Liz?
I'm good. Feeling
Awesome.
very good.
Well, thank you so much for joining conversations around sex and intimacy. So tell us a little bit about you and your work.
Awesome. I am a self pleasure practitioner. I got my certification through the Institute of New Paradigm Intimacy in Australia. I didn't go to Australia, but
oh wow,
it's all online, and it was like a 6-month program where I met with I could just share about that experience actually, and just
yeah,
the beautiful experience that was of just being able to connect with people on a deeper, intimate level. And it's also being able to do it in a way where you can still be vulnerable and still do it over a camera. And that's what I really like about self pleasure too, is that it can be done anywhere. If a client's not comfortable with me meeting them in person, I'm like, okay, that's great. I don't need to be there, because it's everything that you do yourself.
totally. There's so many classes now that you can take online. I mean, certification programs, and I see clients remotely as well, so I have clients all over the country, and there's so much more that we can do now by being remote.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was a perfect time too, because it was I got it during COVID too. It was at the beginning of COVID where I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going into work and I'm not I'm just at home, so I might as well, do something. And it kind of is one of those serendipitous things where it just fell in my lap. It was okay, this is actually where I really need to be. And it was at a time too where it's I'm a very spiritual person, and my mentor, the person who runs that program, was sexuality is the last dragon to slay when it comes to sexuality, where it's you go through all
I
of these
like that.
And sexuality, and it actually I'm sure there's other dragons that need to be slayed down the road.
Totally.
I feel there's sexuality, right? And then there's the personal relationships that come with that. That's the final dragon to slay, or the ongoing dragon that you keep trying to slay.
Tell us, what was the program called in Australia?
Institute of New Paradigm Intimacy.
Okay.
And that's kind of what it is too, is it kind of opened my eyes to a new paradigm of because I have my part-time job as a facilitating groups for children and families. And so I had the relationship foundation in that, just facilitating. I learned a lot about okay, this is inner child healing and parenting. Not that that was a part of the course, but just in having to teach it and having to work with kids and parents, it's oh, I really need to start doing work on myself in these aspects, and healing relationships when it comes to those parts of myself, the inner parent and the inner child, and my own parents and my own family as well. And And then like, okay, like let's talk about deeper intimacy and actually being able to connect with one another and in a way that's, and even just like connecting with your body as well, and how universal, like, you know, connecting with your body can help you in so many different situations. So
Oh
that's,
yeah.
yeah. And yeah. And so in being able to like in that journey to um like I had done meditation and I had done like yoga, and it was just like a beautiful, like intuitive, feminine process
Mhm.
where it's like I got to be free, like in my own body and connecting it in that way. Um, and I know that you said that you teach like mindful masturbation, right?
Yeah, I do. I mentor with Body Joy Intimacy School, and so we have Melissa Davison, the head of the school. She does mindful masturbation. She has a program called The Practice that is downloadable. That people can follow to have their own self pleasure practice. And I teach my clients mindful masturbation as well. And it's, I think, a very amazing resource. Of course, like I try out everything that I do with clients on myself. So I had, I've always been a very explorative person. And, before I became a practitioner, I too, was on my own journey, my own self exploration journey. And I, was at a crossroads, a very similar crossroads where I was in a yoga teacher training. Um, I was practicing kink. I was a member of the kink community, and I was assisting a tantrika. And I was also going to ashrams and practicing meditation. And so it was like all of the things were just like converging to be like, this is what we're focusing on now. And I definitely love to intertwine all of them because they really opened me up at that time. And I think that, you never know when you're going to have your sexual awakening, and that is what is exciting. And so as I kind of went on that journey, I too began to seek out mentorship, and I have developed a practice around getting in the body, being present, having mindfulness, bringing it inward. And so much can come out of that. And I use that with clients to kind of have a deeper relationship with themselves as well as their partners through, doing exercises with self pleasure.
Amazing. Yeah, that's awesome.
And that's what you tell me about your self pleasure practice. Like, what is it about doing that is very inspiring to you for your work, and how do you incorporate that with your clients?
Yeah. So I think like joining the Institute and getting into self pleasure, I had like I was unknowingly like dealing with my own sexual trauma. I had a mentor, like a tantric mentor before the Institute.
Hmm.
And at the time, like I was just started dating my boyfriend at the time, and like and just noticing like there was a lot of like shutting down. There's a lot of like I and not really even understanding my own boundaries as well, where it was just like I went into that fawn freeze response like whenever like that would come up. And so and also like I wasn't never an exploratory person when it came to my sexuality. Like I never like masturbation like bored me, you know, and like my sexual experiences with my partners too were just like I get intimacy from sex, and that's what I get, connection to that person
Hmm.
through sex. And that's like I was using it, I was outsourcing a lot of my sexual energy on previous partners. And with this new one, I'm like, okay, we're gonna do something different. We gotta change the intimacy aspect of it. And so like it was a long and frustrating process, I think, because there was a process of like what I like about self pleasure is it's not like I like I actually liked learning about erotic blueprints because it gave me a language for it. So like I
Yeah.
yeah, so I'm my first erotic blueprint is energetic. Like when I found out about it, I'm like, oh, this is what
Yes.
this, yeah, this makes sense. Like, oh, what's energetic, like
Yes.
erotic
So,
blueprint?
side note, everyone, if you don't already know, there's this thing called the Erotic Blueprints. And we went to a workshop because we're both in St. Petersburg, and it was an amazing workshop led by Johnny Vajra and Stacey Isidro. And they are erotic blueprint coaches. But also check out Goop, Sex, Love, and Goop, which is a show on Netflix right now that kind of also shows what this work looks like and what the erotic blueprints looks like. And I definitely totally agree with you. Like, to be able to put a name to the different layers, because people have different layers. Like, I'm totally shapeshifter, and it makes total sense to me. And like the test, I don't know, when it comes to like, percentages, I'm like, okay, but like I'm constantly evolving and changing. And like sometimes I'm really into kinky and sometimes I'm really into sensual. And so like, I like that there is that, word to describe being, in different spaces and places, and like being in, like, sometimes I really love more sensual touch and sometimes I just want to have sex and I'm really sexual. And so like putting that, vocabulary is very helpful. And the energetic is so fascinating to me. I'm like, I don't know, like I definitely feel it and believe it, but to see it in that way, like on the show and like on the live demo we saw this weekend, like it's very inspiring that there's this whole other level, like with very limited touch. And so you've experienced that?
Yes, that's actually like my first two that were on there. I'm like, this makes a lot of sense. The last two were interesting. Like my last one is sexual. And like it was really nice to like, I feel like I really like it. The percentages are, having that scale for the like the kind of the validation where it's like, and that's actually what, and I'm wondering too how much it will change in the future as well. Cause I noticed like the more that I've healed a lot of my own sexual trauma, because like going straight to like the genitals or even like my breasts some days are just like, nope, nope, I don't, nope, not today, not today. So like, even just like, or it's not even, it's a very like intuitive process, or it's like, okay, so where the self pleasure practice is like, okay, so where in my body am I feeling, and it's not even pleasure. So I'm going to explain the self pleasure practice. It's
Okay, break it down.
Yeah, super simple to understand. It's just connecting to the body and responding to it through sound, breath, movement, and touch. So it's for those of you who are not familiar with self pleasure, that's it. And it's a really beautiful way of like understanding your body. Since I was doing yoga this morning for the first time in a long time, since actually doing this practice, like I've noticed how much easier it is to just like let things go, like in certain practices, like taking a breath. A comment made by some other people in the institute were like, does anybody have a hard time staying quiet in a yoga class now? And I'm like, I don't know if I could go to a regular yoga class, because it'd just be like, oh, like just because that's what I know my body needs. And so like that was a beautiful realization, like with the self-pleasure modality, is like, oh, like I can just like I feel into what my body needs. And like and it's funny because like there's like sound for me, like when I first joined, like I was so quiet, like I just didn't know, like part of the practice for the institute is to be witnessed in your self-pleasure practice, because you're going to be witnessing other people, like clients and stuff like that, go through the process. So you're witnessed and you get to witness and you get to be witnessed. And so
okay, hold up, tell us about that. So how do you do that remotely? So how during the program does that what does that look like?
So it's like you jump on Zoom with somebody, right? And you set up your camera, you set up your space, right? And the person is really just like witnessing you in your practice. And
just like this.
Just like this. Yep. Okay. And this is really cool, because this is where, like, I think through the institute, this is where I learned that energetic piece. is
Uh-huh.
because like as this, and this happens with my clients too, because as they're doing their practice, as I'm guiding them, like I'm at the same time like running energy through my body, like running that energetic energy through my body, and energy doesn't know time or space or anything like
Right.
that. So the me being present with my own energy running through my body and being able to guide them, a lot of the times, just like in any sexual experience, like if I notice that they're feeling like a tightness in their stomach, I'll feel a tightness in my stomach, and it's a very like intuitive process, like because you start out like they set it up really really well, where it's like in the beginning you just witness, and you just, that person is going through their body, going through and guiding themselves, and you're just holding space. And it's actually, oh, it's such a powerful experience. It's like to be witnessed in it than do it yourself, because that person is essentially like the anchor, right? So
Yeah.
I tell it, and I actually use this with the parents when I guide them too. I'm like, when your kid is having a temper tantrum, okay, and they're just and
Right.
that was my first self pleasure practice. Fun fact, because self pleasure is not just like you experiencing pleasure the whole time. Like you're gonna come up with you're gonna be met with a lot of like thing. It's really being I'm gonna back up to explain self pleasure again to give a clearer picture. It's like anything, self pleasure is like meeting the moment as it needs to be. So like if you like my first self pleasure practice, I was first witnessed one of the sisters in the institute, and she was just like, she was laying on her back and she was very calm, and she was just like, just kind of like touching her body and just kind of playing around with it. And then it was my turn, and I was just like, I grabbed a pillow and I'm like, and just like started like pounding down, because I'm like, that's what my body needed in that moment, is just like fits of rage. So
Yeah.
it's so in those like going back to the analogy with the parent, like I tell parents all the time, like in those moments where your child is having that temper tantrum, because we needed to have a fucking temper tantrum every once in a while,
Yes, definitely.
um like what you can do to help the situation is you're there. I say you have two options. You can either be like, imagine they're a boat in this shitstorm. I don't use this in my job, but that's what I'm alluding to. Is like, imagine they're a boat in a shitstorm, okay? And the ocean's really, really deep, and there's just so much going on, right? And so what you can do is you can be either be another boat and just knock against that boat, right? Or you can be the anchor in that situation. So that person is able to really experience everything that they're experiencing and feeling safe. Like you're like that safety anchor for them, where it's like, whatever happens, I got you, I'll be here, and I'm going to be present, and I'm going to be, if you want to get into like masculine and feminine energy, like I think of like the archetypes of those things, right? Where it's like the masculine is usually the container. And this that I use to clarify for those listening to, like I use masculine energy and feminine energy, not necessarily gender, but just to describe like that archetype. So the masculine energy usually is the container for things, and then the feminine energy is like the beautiful chaos and creativity and all that stuff. So it's you're able to maintain like polarity, where that person can be in their full beautiful expression and be totally in their body, and you're the one holding that space. So that's like that's where and you can do that over Zoom. Like it's not I've done it in person. Most of the sessions I've done over Zoom, and you can do it in person, but it's and that's actually an edge, I think, for a lot of people, is doing it in person.
Oh yeah.
So
I mean, this
there's a
whole
lot of
like just
energy.
that concept, I'm pretty sure we're blowing people's minds right now. Like, because a lot of people maybe don't witness unless it's their partner, or their partner's on a business trip or long distance, and that's the way to connect. But like to do this with someone else, like it's really a vulnerable place to be in. And so tell me what comes up within that vulnerability in that container of being witnessed.
I think honestly, the biggest vulnerabilities that came up for me is like And I guess not in the guiding sense, because if as a practitioner, I think there's a vulnerability of like, I get a lot of clients that kind of like shut down in their sexuality, or there's certain things that you can and can't do, like, and actually like most of the clients I have coming to me at the moment are male clients. And that's a whole different edge, in itself, is just like, male bodied people, like having, opposite sex, having a practitioner that's an opposite sex than you are. For me, that was my biggest vulnerability, is being witnessed and witnessing my male counterparts. But those were like the most transformative ones, because there was an edge there, because there was a lot of vulnerability and there was a lot of tension in those areas. And when we bring attention to those areas where we feel tense, and we're able to kind of like play with them and move with them, like it becomes so, and I love, we talked about it beforehand, where I use like, we can use the term, I've been reading existential kink. Have you heard or read that one?
I've heard of it, but I haven't read it.
So it's kind of the same. I really like the book because it does bring like the playful and concepts of like kink and sexuality into like everyday life. And so what I love about Self Pleasure, my favorite.
That's my favorite.
Yes, I think you'd love it. I think you would absolutely.
Yes, I feel like there can be opportunities every day.
And that's play. Yes. And it's funny too, because like when I did the test for erotic blueprints, kink was my second to last one. And I'm like, okay, that's where I feel like the questions are worded in a different way, because this is literally the work that I do, is like taking the edge, is like existential edge play, where it's like when you feel uncomfortable. I use the analogy when I talk about this analogy, I think of like standing over an edge, like an actual edge. Do you jump or do you walk away?
Ooh, okay.
And so when I think of like this analogy, like I think of like my family up in Minnesota, like we go to the quarries. I don't know if you've ever been to a quarry before. So a quarry is just like a lake, but it's just like a never ending lake. And there's usually the quarries that we go to, there's like this really, really high ledge. And then there's just this black abyss underneath. And it's just absolutely terrifying to like jump off that ledge. And so what I imagine, like what I tell clients too, it's like when you notice that there's this tension, when you notice that because that's essentially when we avoid things, when we avoid uncomfortable situations, when we avoid things that we don't like doing, it's really just like, it's just the sensation that we feel in the body that we don't like, that makes us feel uncomfortable. Like before the call, I was noticing like all of this, like shaking and like right beforehand. And so there's a moment where I'm like, okay, we're just going to be here and we're just going to kind of play around with that. There's that kink part too. And that's the existential kink part is like, can you actually lean in and play with that energy where it's like, ooh, this is kind of edgy, and like, how can, but not changing your mind to make it feel good, but like
leaning in.
Leaning in. And then all of a sudden,
like, we were talking about how going live on Facebook is an edge. It really is. Because it is like putting yourself out there. It's being vulnerable, and like, so leaning into that, hesitation to do it and doing it anyway and challenging that. And I think like with clients, like it can manifest as, having a hard time having orgasms or emotionally releasing in front of a partner and relaxing into the moment, or having something come up. Like a lot of people have, traumas or PTSD or things that can come up during sex that they, you can never really know when they're going to come up. And so when things come up, how to, where to go with it, how to handle that, like in that fight or flight stage, to be in that energy and to kind of relax and to be seen in that vulnerability.
So I love what you said, back to the Corey situation too. So it's like, okay, what do I do in that situation? Right.
Yeah. Do you jump? Do you jump?
You don't, well, like that's kind of a thing too, because like there for me, like I am somebody, you have like the adrenaline junkies, right? And that's
Yeah.
a lot of like that just go for it. And
Yeah.
I'm like, I tell my clients too, I'm like, hold on a second. And I think
Mm,
that's for elite for me too, like when it came to just jumping, like, okay, we're just gonna do it. Like that's where I think I betrayed my body a lot in sexual situations. So what I tell my clients, even when we're on a call, like maybe we're on a discovery or alignment call, and they're feeling nervous about working with me or joining a course that I'm doing or something like that, and there's like this nervous energy, and I'm like, okay, this is what we're gonna do. Honestly, all you have to do is just dangle your toes over the edge. I just want you to feel what it would feel like if you actually jumped. Because I think there's like for me, I think there's a or actually for in my life in general, like what I either do is I just go. I just okay, we're gonna
right.
do it, right? And sometimes there you need to do that, but a lot of the times you're missing out on the actual like embodied experience of like taking that jump, and then
Mhm.
all of that big rush of energy and that almost like orgasmic anxiety before like that moment where you actually take the jump, and then it just like when you're actually like in the freezing cold like abyss water, you're like, oh my gosh, I did it. you know and even in that moment too, like I've had clients where I'm like, okay, let's just dangle I've had like, or potential clients I should say, during our calls where I'm like, okay, let's just you're feeling nervous, let's actually just dangle our toes over the edge. What are you feeling right now? What feels true for you in this moment of just like being at your edge? Do you feel like you can jump? Do you feel like you can take that leap even with all your anxious anxiety, like all that energy? And
Oh,
I've
I
had
love it.
clients tell me,
I
yeah, I've
love
had
it.
or I've had potential clients tell me like, actually, no, I feel like I need to walk away. I feel like this actually, I don't want to do this. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
beautiful. yeah, that's amazing.
Great. Yeah. It's like
Yeah.
owning and cultivating awareness within your
yes,
body and like what feels true and right for you to do in that moment.
absolutely. Exactly.
I love that. And it's, for what I've seen in the mindful masturbation practice that I do, it's so many of us are in this go-to, this very comfortable, normal way that you've been, doing self-pleasure for a million, times already, that you've kind of grown up into, that's like been a part of your development stages around your sexuality. And then on the other side of that is, what else can you have? What else can you explore? What else can you experience? What other sensations can you drop into? And so much of that is unknown, until you experience it. And so it's kind of like breaking patterns of what you've been doing and trying other things, and kind of, doing that dance and that exploration.
Oh my gosh, there's so many other parts. I don't remember. I think we were at the erotic event. Somebody was like, what is up with ankles? Like, I just learned that
Ooh,
like
yes.
yeah, and it's just like that's actually yeah, there's so many like the first time that I had like a full body orgasm, like it was the first time that I was on my own. It was before like I got into any tantric thing. It's just like I was doing research on like tantric practices because I was really interested at the time.
Yeah.
And like I remember I was just like playing with my body a little bit, and I'm like, okay, what this is, I don't know, this is all right. And then I like it was like my wrist, like I remember like licking like my wrist all the way up
Oh.
to my thumb, and it was like, whoa, where did that come from? And I tried to recreate the thing, and I'm like, it's not working. But like it was like I had no idea that there was like just my wrist and all the way up to my thumb. It was just like, what is my body?
Yeah, and like you never know what part of your body is going to experience pleasure in. It'll surprise you. Like I remember Stacy said, like she was like, yeah, one of my girlfriends said that she had an orgasm, someone licking the inside of her elbow. And I was like, because this is literally the most sensitive place, and I just loved the inside of my elbow. And I was like, really? Like,
Yes,
I'm gonna need to focus on the but like you never know, like and you can even like just be in a state of like being so aroused that you're feeling, so much energy just being by yourself on, like high on, whatever, you've been experiencing. Like you can be in a state of arousal that is not with no touch, not with no sensory touch. So you can be in a state of orgasmic energy. I love that. I love the edge play of coming to the edge of the quarry and kind of feeling like what you need to do in that moment. And so with clients, do you kind of teach them self-care, like this is how you determine what you need in that moment, or is it just really about that awareness of coming to that place and feeling in where your edges are?
I think it's totally just on, everybody's different. I think it is really just on what your personal edges are. And like this practice too has really helped me like in every area of my life. Like I used to get so triggered by like, I think there's an episode, I don't know if you watched The Office, but it was like in the last season.
Oh yeah.
They had like the boss, like the seedy, like creepy, just like toxic masculinity boss, like at the very, very end. And he was just like, life is about sex. Sex is life. And I'm like, screw you. Like I was so triggered by it. And now I'm like, no, yeah, sex is life. Like yes. You can use it for everything. You can use it for literally everything. We were talking about kink and meeting your edge. And it's like, there's an entire book on just like the existential kink book is an entire book on just like incorporating concepts of BDSM. And like I actually just was watching somebody do a live on your business and incorporating BDSM into your business, where it was like, ooh. I know it was like like Dom and
I'm gonna need you to send me that handle.
She just did the one live, but I'm like, this is actually exactly what I needed, where it was like, so you're like, we'll talk again using not necessarily the gender, but the energies of just feminine and masculine energy. She was like, so your feminine is creative and wants to surrender. And like, that's all of the ideas that you have and all the creativity and stuff like that. That's what I imagine. That's my feminine. That's how I embody my feminine. And then you have, and she's kind of like the sub, and then you have but she's just out like doing her thing, and she doesn't really have any set plans or goals or anything. She's like, you need the dom, you need the one for, and and it was really cool too, because like just like you would do in BDSM, you create the container, right? So like, set the space. In my spiritual practice, I call it, setting up the ritual space. So doing it like a ritual, but in BDSM, it's considered,
setting up the scene.
Yep. Setting the scene. Yes. And so you set the scene, like maybe you light a candle, maybe you clean off your desk or something like that. And then, you have all this creative energy, and your feminine's like, woo, 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 okay, like, I have so many great ideas, and this feels so good to have like all of this creativity running through my body. And then you have the dom going, she's like spanking you on the ass going like, okay, let's get it done then. Let's actually sit down and like, and put it, on paper. So it was I'm like, yeah, this is exactly what I need at the moment,
Oh, wow. I love that. So one of the other things that we talked about was how doing this edge play can bring up some shadows. And so for people who maybe have never heard of this concept before, do tell us, where does shadow work come in?
So I think when people hear the term shadow work, like I remember talking to somebody and they're like, that sounds really scary. I don't want to do that. I'm like, no, it's not the most comfortable process either. Like it's it's edgy in itself. And it's just like, and this is where I feel like going back, and what I love working with like one-on-one with people within like intimacy, because this is where like a lot of your shadows can be found in your most intimate relationships, whether it be with your partners, children, family members, like, that's a lot of shadows, because a lot of triggers come up, and that's where you can kind of find like following that trail down to whatever shadow is there. And there's a real beauty with self-pleasure and this edge play that I'm talking about too, where it's like meeting your edge and just dangling your toes there and just feeling the discomfort of just dangling your toes and like what it would be like to jump. There's also like being kind of like what I was talking with. I was actually really upset when this existential book became so popular, because I'm like, I wish I would have written the book first. Like, I'm like, this is what I've been doing and this is what I feel so inspired to talk about and do. So definitely go read the book. But because everybody, I feel like, can be really like really benefit from this information. And like to be able to create things that you want in your life, we can use the term manifestation because that's another buzzword that we use recently. And like a concept of like what I do with self-pleasure and edge play and shadow work is like what a lot of people would consider sex magic, right? Except like the first time I was introduced to the concept of sex magic, again, like early in my Googling what tantric practices were, I think I found a video of this lady, this very witchy lady, and she had a beautiful, like gaudy, ornate bed. And like, she's like, well, how I manifest money is, I put a bunch of dollar bills on the bed, and either by myself or with my lover, I think of the number that I want in my bank account, and then at orgasm, that's when I meet that. And I'm like, I know so many people that do that practice, and I'm like, it doesn't work. Like sometimes it does work, and I think that lady, like, I believe that she is able to actually, she manifested those things in that process. But I think what she failed to kind of miss is that shadow work piece. Like, in order to be able to reach your goals and get to places where you want, you kind of have to like become friends with the parts of you that are keeping you from doing that. And I think that's a lot of people when we think like inner demons, and like I'm a very shadow, like, even, I don't know how your impression, anybody listening's impression of me, but I seem like a very like, ooh, like airy fairy, like type of person. But I'm like,
but you identify with that darkness.
I do. Like I've I've played with my own inner demons before. Like, I like the dark shit. I like the shadowy, taboo places that nobody likes to go, because and that the stuff that doesn't feel that good maybe probably lie more on the masochistic side of just like, because I see that's a lot of where I see this magic, where I see a lot of like this manifestation. And to be able to give it in maybe layman's terms or ways for people to understand, it's like,
can you give like a scenario where a shadow might you can kind of identify that being a shadow?
Okay, so,
and it can be hypothetical, you don't have to share your personal, whatever you feel comfortable.
I might. So like,
we're all here for it. I'm here for it.
Let's say I'll do two examples. One for like going back to the money situation, right? So let's say you do want to manifest money. Like, when you think of that number in your bank account, what's actually going through your body? Like okay, so $500 in my bank account. Ooh, I got like a knot in my stomach when that happened. Okay, that makes me feel really, really uncomfortable. Like, we do. Okay, let me think of like a little bit more. I have to change
my shadow. The shadow is like fear of not having enough.
Yeah, you may have a fear of like not having enough or having
lack.
Yeah, I think that's what I like about that. They talk about it in the existential kink book, where it's like there's a part of you, there's a subconscious part of you that maybe you did grow up in scarcity. And so there's a part of you that's maybe used to feeling scarcity. Yes. Or, in the book, they talk about like, there's a part of you that still gets off on that scarcity. There's an inner demon, right? There's something that's in you that's like, this is where I feel safe because this is what I know.
Yeah. So, a story, like a story of how you have to be based on a fear.
Exactly. Yeah. And so using like, what I love, so bringing it back to edge play and self pleasure, like we store so much, we store all of our trauma, as far as I know, like we store the majority of our trauma like in the body. And so, and like I said before, where it's like, if there's something that makes you feel uncomfortable, a lot of the things that we avoid is just a sensation that we feel in the body that we're not comfortable with. So if you're able to think of that number, that actually happened to me recently. It's like, I have been like in living in scarcity for the past, like after paying for all of the, after COVID, paying for all of the classes, the courses that I took and stuff like that, like my bank account was pretty low. And so I had this $520 that I got in my bank account. And that was the most that I've gotten in a long time. And that stayed there for a long time. And there was a part of me that's like, oh, that's so much. I need to spend it, you know? And it's like, oh, there's an anxiety there. And so going back into my self-pleasure practice of like, okay, this is the amount of money. What am I feeling with this number of money? And it was like, somebody had described it to me recently where it's like, there's that glass ceiling. So like maybe you're able to bring more money in, but there's more bills that come up, you know, like there's like this glass ceiling that you keep hitting, but when you actually just come up and meet it, right? And sit with it, then it's like all of a sudden you end up like on top. So an example of like, since we talk about like intimacy and relationships, I think a lot, and I said a lot of shadows come up in these relationships. Like maybe
like jealousy would be a good relationship shadow.
Yes. So
or you know, traumas can be shadows, or feeling of losing someone, like the stuff that you're not going to say on your first date. You're not going to highlight
exactly where you find out
these are sides of me that, you know, are a part of me, but, you know, are there, and keeping them in the shadows is that fear feeling.
Yeah. And what's
that undertone
beautiful about like sexuality is that we experience so much shame. Like the analogy I use for shadow work is like, it's a lot of the things that we don't want. So we put it away. So let's say you have a curated house full of beautiful things, and it's all your favorite things, and it's like all your favorite personality, and it's like all the parts of yourself that you love. And then you have these other parts that you keep away in storage. You know, you don't like them, you know, you received shame and guilt and like all of these things in the past. And so you just keep them in storage. And it's like, okay, just because they're in storage and you can invite people over and you can show them your beautiful house, you still own all of that stuff, you know? And sometimes, you know, in certain relationships or certain situations, those things come knocking on your door and you're like, nope, not dealing with it, not dealing with it. Because they're seen as like bad things, and there's a lot of shame, there's a lot of uncomfortable feelings. And so when you're able to actually just like, okay, come on in, we're going to sit, we're going to have a powwow, I'm going to show you a little bit of love, we're going to dangle our toes over the edge of whatever it is that's going on. So like maybe, and it's really funny too, because like a lot of the things that like I experienced within my relationships, or it's like I had the same thing happen in every relationship that I've been in. It's like, it's not going away. I just keep manifesting the same things in every single relationship. And so what I've been doing in my own personal practice, and I think this happens with almost, it's like, and I every partner that I've talked about, like, oh yeah, like I've always had somebody like you that does this or this. And I'm like, okay, these are our shadows, right? These are even though it seems like it's the other person, like if we keep manifesting it, how can we kind of take responsibility for that? Like what is the shadow here? What is the trigger that's kind of being shown to me at the moment?
Yeah.
So what's the trigger? Paying attention to that in the body. Like maybe it's, or even like the belief, like, okay, I've never had a relationship longer than like 3 months, therefore I can't stay in a committed relationship. Like that's not, or my partner's cheated on me every single time, therefore, you know, I have a hard time trusting partners, kind of thing, where it's like that is a felt sensation in the body too. And then having that lack of trust creates a certain environment for you and your partner or partners where, you know, things may arise that actually sabotage that part of the relationship. You may not have a partner has any desire to cheat on you, but it still creates that tension in the relationship. And that's where we can kind of, that's a shadow. And so that's where we can kind of come back and like honor and love that
Mm.
shadow within us,
Oh,
right?
I just love it. I love this work so much. Yes.
Mhm.
And you can kind of breathe in. And what I did with a coach that I was working with is, because I'm a visual person. I'm just like a creative brain. And so we did a meditation, but it was a visualization. And it was like, go down into this dark castle and there's your shadow, and go up to it and talk to it and give it a hug, like, and like having a relationship with this part of myself so that I can learn to love it. And like, it's so beautiful. I love just seeing people become comfortable and like having that experience myself of just going like, this is a part of me, and like soothing and healing and loving it, even though it's still there, but maybe just a little bit lighter, maybe not so much in the shadows, maybe a little bit of healing happening.
Yeah. I think a lot of people, like I noticed actually a lot of shadow work with people, with kids and parents. Like I wanted to do inner child healing actually after working with kids and parents, because I realized like my own inner dynamic, right? And on parts of my own inner child that's healed. And
Yeah.
we react to our inner child, which we sometimes deem the ego, sometimes we call it like a shadow, right? And it's really just like our little inner child throwing a temper tantrum and wanting to be seen, you know?
Yes.
And so
Yes.
like, but we learned that from our parents that a lot of these things aren't helpful. And so it's like it's almost like if shadow work isn't the work that doesn't sound as good, like think of it as like inner child healing where you're
Yes,
reparenting.
I am
Yeah.
such a huge fan of inner child work. And
Mhm.
if you have, this is a great time. I'm so sorry we're running out of time, but this is our segue. So if you're interested at all in learning about your inner child, or any of this sounds exciting to you, both Liz and I are sex coaches. I consider myself a sex and intimacy coach. You have a pleasure practice, but you're also a life coach, energy life coach. And you see clients. Are you taking on clients now?
Yes. Yes. I have 3 spots available at this time, but if maybe somebody's watching it on the replay like later on, feel free to reach out to me regardless, and we'll figure out a good time.
Wonderful. And then how can people find you and learn more of your beautiful work?
They can find me on Instagram. My Instagram handle is the.embodied_realist. And this is like on there, I go by a lot of titles on there. I'm a spiritual business coach. So like I said, self pleasure is a really cool modality.
Yeah.
Yes, to be able to work with anything. So I'm like, at the moment I felt very called to doing spiritual business coaching or leadership. That's mostly what I focus on that page. But if you have any other questions about intimacy, pleasure, sexuality, like there's so much of that embedded in that page as well. And feel free to reach out and ask.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining us and having this beautiful conversation around edge play and shadows. And I just love it so much. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. This is Sheba's Spice Rack, and you can continue to watch it on my Facebook page here. And also, you can share it or watch it on my YouTube channel as well. And we will see you next week. Stay tuned for the next special guest. Thank you so much, Liz. It's such a treat to connect with you. And I'll be sure to share your link in the comments below so that people can find and follow you.
Awesome. Thank you
All
so much.
right. Have a beautiful night.
Bye. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.